Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Truebill. Get control of your subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, Adam Engst and I have done a whole lot of user group appearances, but for some reason we sort of stopped doing one-on-ones. And so that was bad. That was bad on my part. So we're going to fix that and do a one-on-one with Adam Engst. Adam, welcome. It's great to see you.
I blame the pandemic. It's got to be the pandemic's fault. It's like traffic. Like when you live in a city and you're late all the time, you just traffic. It was traffic. I'm blaming the pandemic.
Well, I think there's truth to that because, it's been, we've been in a pandemic for 2 years, and it seems, at times it seems like 20 years, and other times it seems like about 2 weeks. So right. It's a time warp.
It's absolutely true. Nice to be here. It's nice.
Yes,
to catch up with just us. We don't have to actually make nice for all the group that's out there in the ether. We can say what we really think now.
Yeah. Well, we usually say what we really think, and then they don't ask us back for a while. So,
it's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that inspired me to do this, you wrote an article for TidBITS entitled "Cloud Storage Forecast Unsettled with Possible Storms." And I felt like this was kind of the perfect thing to talk about as your return to MacVoices, simply because we're all looking at the cloud storage. Earlier today, I was talking to someone who is talking about trying to become a cloud storage advocate for a company. And it's like, really? Okay, cloud storage advocate. That's a thing now. Apparently it is. So I wanted to hear your take, I guess, on what your personal cloud storage issues have been, because you outlined some of them in the article, and how it's going, because the article is now about 2.5, 3 weeks old.
Yeah, it was fascinating writing it. I struggled with the article, honestly, because it doesn't quite fit the level of rigor and depth that I like for a TidBITS article. And part of it is there's so much to cloud storage now. What's going on with any one of these services could have been a full article if I'd had the time, the inclination, and kind of the moxie to dig into it for long enough. Oh geez, what are they doing now? So it was fascinating, running into stuff with Dropbox, with Google Drive, OneDrive I don't actually use, but there were a major hullabaloo surrounding changes in OneDrive, and Apple's at the heart of some of this stuff, and not all of it. So it was interesting, and the other thing that I kind of realized is it used to be simple. Cloud storage used to just be use Dropbox. That was just the answer. And for various reasons that I somewhat get into in the article, it's not that simple anymore. You get into issues with, Dropbox is being fussy if you only want a free account, but you need it on more than 3 devices. Or you get caught up in ecosystem situations where, this group standardized on Google stuff. Well, there's going to be Google Drive. That's, hey, you're going to be using Google Drive, not Dropbox. Apple actually made iCloud Drive usable after many, many years. And so that's a free possibility that everyone's got, and, that's another one. If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, OneDrive becomes a whole lot simpler to integrate, and they give you a terabyte for free with your Microsoft 365 subscription. So it's really an interesting world and an interesting time in that world, but not an easy one.
Okay, so one of the reasons I liked the article was that you had all these problems. Sorry, but it wasn't just an Apple article. It was, all these things crossing up, because as much as you and I are heavily into the Apple ecosystem, we use other services. And so many of your readers, my listeners and viewers, they're out there using Google and Microsoft and, Dropbox. And, then a bunch of I hesitate, because I don't want to disparage anyone, to call them no-name cloud services, but there are, 24, maybe 20 cloud services.
Tons and tons of them, yeah.
Yeah, and some of them have great reputations, and some of them are a little shaky. But I mean, I guess from where I sit, all of them are kind of doing the same thing. They all want to be more than just cloud storage, which is kind of admirable, but also is kind of a pain in the neck.
It is a pain in the neck. I was like, I'm actually not sure it is admirable. And that's actually, I think, some of the second tier services, let's call them that. Sometimes they actually do a better job at just being storage because, I mean, it's frustrating. Dropbox, yeah, I was a huge Dropbox fan for many, many years. And then they just couldn't let well enough alone. Dropbox was great. It was great for sharing between your own devices. And it was great for sharing with other people. And that was it. It didn't have to do anything more. It was good. And then they had to add, we've got Dropbox paper collaboration, and we've got this, and we've got this desktop app that makes it way more complicated than it ever was when it was just built into the Finder, that kind of thing. And you just want to slap them and say, go back to what you were. And that was how it worked fine. And I get it. They're businesses and they're trying to get more and they have to compete and blah, blah, blah. But fact is, it's not as satisfying a system as it used to be.
Yes. I mean, yes. There's certain things they've put in that I do like, especially since our local storage is often so limited especially on laptops, the selective sync capability. So that, okay, I can say that it's in Dropbox, and it is in Dropbox. It's just not stored. The file itself is not stored locally. I click, I can download it, and it's there for me. I really like that feature. The collaboration features, though, I mean, they're competing with so many other things out there that are so well established, and at least from where I sit, it's not measuring up, and I wish they would just stop it.
Right. And similarly, other ones like Google Drive, I see Google Drive as largely as the storage and like the Finder-like equivalent behind Google Docs and Google Sheets and all that. And of course, and most people see it that way too when you interact via a web page and everything like that. The problem is that Google does have Drive for desktop. They used to be called Backup and Sync, and that's a whole other part of the change. But when you get into that, well, then it's sort of like Dropbox. It's actually a whole lot like Dropbox, but it's just a little bit clunkier and harder to connect because of this dual interface. And Dropbox actually, of course, has the dual interface too, but no one ever uses the website if they can avoid it, because that's way worse than using the Finder. Whereas the Google Drive, you mostly use the website because it's sort of connected to Google Docs and Google Sheets in your browser already, and almost no one knows that they can connect it to the Finder. So, as I said, frustrating field. It's a frustrating field.
Well, it feels like you've made the point early that if an organization or something you're part of has adopted Google and Google Drive and all that as their methodology, now I've got to learn the Google Sheets and the Google Word Docs or whatever. If it's Microsoft, well, for better or worse, we all kind of know Microsoft to some degree, but now you're over in that ecosystem. And then, in Apple's iCloud, I admit for me, it took me a little while to kind of figure out exactly, how this was working. I've really come to like it a lot because now all my documents live in iCloud. Well, the supported documents for Apple's applications live in iCloud. I can call them up on my phone. I can call them up on my iPads. I can call them on any of my computers. So there's a lot to be said for that. But it's the crossing over and the fact that, okay, now I've got multiple places I've got to make sure that I don't store too much stuff in.
So I've got to juggle it. I didn't get into this in the article, again, talking about a rabbit hole to go down, is there are apps that attempt to like bring them all together in one interface, sometimes even like building into the Finder. So like you just get a drive, and inside that drive, it just like makes all your online storage space available to you, which is kind of interesting. But the problem is there's always gotchas. So, if, it could even be as simple as naming, for instance, like they have different naming restrictions, or it could be issues with sharing, or like you want to give this file to so and so. Well, you have to know whether or not it's in Google Drive or Dropbox or iCloud to be able to do that in a coherent way for that person. And so, it is just tricky. I realize we're just kind of complaining here, and part of what's frustrating about it is that I think the solutions actually are. Everyone is going to have multiple solutions. That's what I'm getting at. We want it to be this one, like, here's my cloud storage, and you can't do that anymore. That you really are going to have to live with the fact that you're probably going to have Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive and iCloud Drive, and you're just going to use them all in different situations.
I agree. I mean, I don't think you have much choice, because depending on what your occupation is and then what your avocations are, you're inevitably going to run into all four of these services and maybe others that are cloud-based.
Oh, so. easily, yeah. And and I've even seen it. So, for instance, I'm the president of the Finger Lakes Runners Club here in Ithaca, and one of the things that I have pushed the club into doing over the past few years is everything is in Google Drive, everything, because otherwise it disappears when someone moves or, stops being a race director or whatever it is. It's like, I'm just hammering on people to get it all into the shared Google Drive, because that's how you have a chance of moving forward. And it's a large set of people, wide technical capabilities, platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Google's the common denominator. Microsoft isn't actually. I mean, the fact is that yes, people might have it, but it's not reliable in terms of people having it, guaranteeably, and knowing how to use it successfully. Whereas Google Docs and Google Sheets are, for better or worse, easier to use. They don't tend to have the same level of feature set, but that's not what we're after in this particular case. So, it was a situation where it's like, yep, we're standardizing here. You got to draw a line in the sand, and you got to stick with it. Because as soon as you venture outside of that, then people are like, how do I do such and such? Yeah.
Yeah. And should I bring up Microsoft Teams, or should I just not?
Oh, no. Yeah, just shoot that one in the back corner.
Okay. I mean, but that's kind of another cloud, yet another cloud.
Yeah. Once you get into the whole video conferencing, or are we using Slack? Are we using Teams? Are we using, whatever the heck Google's got these days? Who knows? I mean, Google has like 17 different chatty systems. So I literally don't know what to say for that. But yeah, once you get into the collaboration and communication platforms, that's a whole nother situation. And then you're also trying to tie your storage into that if you're looking for an integrated solution. My experience is those things don't work unless you've got a pretty coherent, fairly small, and fairly, it wasn't quite the right term, but subservient group. In other words, if you can make the group do what you want, you can implement one of these things. If you're trying to get consensus on something, no. Yeah, it's just going to be too hard. So
Adam, one of the things, and this is kind of a segue into another section, but let's stop right here for a moment. One of the things, though, that I'm finding, I think, is that we are all keeping more stuff. And, we're all digital pack rats, sometimes for very good reason, because, sometimes you need records, you need historical documents, you need things. But there's also this mentality, and I know I'm infected with it. So I'm the poster boy. I might need that sometime. So I'm not going to delete it. I'll just put it into a folder inside of a folder inside of a folder. And that way I know it's there, but I don't have to look at it.
Yep. I'm a great believer in keeping everything. Okay. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that, yes, it's a digital pack rat, but we've got storage coming out our ears. It's really not a problem. And if it saves you 10 minutes a year in the future, it was worth it. It doesn't have to be a big win. It could be as simple as, oh man, how did I say that in that document? If I can go look and pull out a paragraph of text, that was worth it. So the only thing that I will say that is that it's easy to end up with nonsensical storage. So for instance, back when we were doing Take Control, this is something we ran into a lot, where we versioned each, as we were writing a book, and Joe still does this, basically as it moves from author to editor and back again, each person versions and names it. So we'll get, file -1 -ace, file -2 CJ, et cetera, so that you can tell who's done it and you get a version each time. And that protects you against any kind of corruption or confusion. Like, yes, the apps usually have versioning capabilities and things like that, but even the storage services often have the same thing. But if you can see those files in the Finder with nice little numbers associated with them, it's a whole lot faster in a recovery situation to get what you want. And so, but so you finish a book and you realize that you literally have 500 megabytes of these files. Those are the ones you throw out. Yeah, you don't do it till the end, but you have to get rid of those files because that's where madness lies. The world does not need versions of things. We are not James Joyce, where it would be interesting to discover what the for Finnegan's Wake, what the previous draft said.
Okay, so I said we were on our way to something, and
I sidetracked that pretty good, didn't I?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, but your point is well taken, and that that's a whole nother discussion that we could do a couple hours on file management. But I want to take you to Gmail,
okay?
Because you mentioned Gmail in the article, and the fact that you were grandfathered in for X amount of storage, and you have gone beyond that. Is that because of what you just said, that you don't throw anything away?
It is, and again, even with that, so for instance, when we were doing Take Control, our system sent me an email receipt for every purchase. So hundreds of thousands of email receipts, all nicely labeled away, never had to mess with them. And when I hit for whatever reason, my magic number was 36 gig. I had 36 gig of Google storage. And when I would hit that, I'd go in and I'd clean up. And there's various ways Google makes, you can find oversized attachments and various different things, and I would clean it up. And at some point I was like, okay, I'll get rid of, after we'd sold Take Control to Joe, I really didn't need these things. I'll go delete all these. That turned out to be a trick too. But it didn't save that much room because they were all tiny. And so I kept kind of hovering in that 35 to 36 gig range and getting the warnings. And finally I just said, this is not worth it, and bought myself 100 gig, subscribed to 100 gig of Google storage. And now it's not a problem at all. And it'd be interesting. I actually don't know what my email storage has risen to, but I'll bet it's not more than 37 gig or whatever, because you don't get that much. I mean, I was just right at the point. Let's see. I got to look because I'm really curious now.
Well, while you're looking, it's the attachments that'll kill you, because I can have 20 years of tidbits, and it does not, even if I deleted it, it's not going to help me that much. But it's the attachments that really, for me, stack up so quickly.
I don't get a vast number of attachments, so that's not my problem. So, I thought Google used to tell me my storage amount. Maybe it was only telling me my storage amount because I was so low. 38. There we go. So Google One logged in 38.5 gig. So I haven't gone up much in percentage terms, but in raw terms, but it's enough to have pushed me over in a real way. So yeah, I mean, attachments are an issue, and you get people sending them around a lot. That's actually one of the reasons why I actually really like the whole Google ecosystem for collaborative groups, because it eliminates the attachment nonsense. Hate attachments. And then you've got versions of things, and people said, oh, did you get no, I made some changes to that document. Let me send it to you again. That kind of nonsense. Whereas if it's all in one place, in Google Drive, in Google Docs, it's just, there's one document to rule them all, and everyone can see it, and there's no question about what version you've got or who has to store it or anything like that. So But yeah, email's an issue. But I'm a great believer in not throwing out email because that is a record of stuff. And even if it's as simple as like, 5 years down the road, oh yeah, what was I saying? I was talking with that guy about this thing, and I can search on his name and find out what we were saying. So I don't do it every day, but I probably do it a couple of times a month anyway.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Truebill. Get control of your subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. 40% of people recently said they're overwhelmed by the number of subscriptions they pay for. The other 60% probably forgot they subscribed in the first place. If you're not sure how to take control of your subscriptions, you need Truebill. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. By law, most states don't have to disclose when subscriptions renew. Get a hold of your subscriptions with Truebill. Truebill empowers you to save more, spend less, see everything, and take back control of your financial life. Stay on top of your spending with Truebill. Get an effortless breakdown of your finances to see where your money is going and how to improve. Truebill will notify you of important events that need your attention, so you're never caught off guard again. Featured in Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and Fortune, Truebill has earned thousands of 5-star reviews and saved its members over $100 million. Shouldn't you be saving money with Truebill? Start canceling your unused subscriptions at truebill.com/MacVoices. Go right now, truebill.com/MacVoices. It could save you thousands a year. truebill.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Truebill for their support of MacVoices. So is the process of going from what you had to what you have now on with Google Drive or with Gmail, excuse me, is that just like upgrading your iCloud storage? You just send a check and nothing changes, no settings, no nothing. It just all of a sudden you've got more storage.
Yep. You just subscribe to Google One, they call it, or you get into Google One and it says like, I've got 121 gigabytes of storage. And I forget what I think that I said I pay them $19.95 a year for that 100 gig. Whereas before I was paying $5 a year for 20 gig or something. I was like, well, that's a good deal, but they didn't keep that plan around. So it's like the cell companies, like they would honor it, but you couldn't get it anymore. So I stuck with that one as long as I could. But yeah, it's just like that. You just get more. And I suspect that if I tried to go down, they would tell me that, that's a problem. So.
Yeah. Well, I ask just because I know I'm approaching that, but more importantly, I think there are a lot of people out there that are probably approaching it and they haven't even tried to do any management. And one day they're going to get that dirty little email that says, oh yeah, by the way,
Google's pretty good. I mean, and most of these services are, I'm sure, but Google's pretty good about telling you, hey, you're getting close. And you will start having problems if you don't do something about this. But yeah, I'm just sort of looking at my Google One thing. I'm using almost 41 gig of my 120, and it's obviously 38.5 is Gmail and 2 gig is Google Drive. So 2.2. So fact is, and I use Google Drive heavily, but I just don't need that much space. That was my irritation with Dropbox, is that I've fully understand their need to, be able to have paying plans and all that. But they offer a free plan. They had all of these ways you could get more free space by referring people and whatnot. And then they took and made that completely not useful to me by limiting it to 3 devices. Now, to be fair, I have heard there's a new client, which I haven't tested yet, called Maestral, Maestral. Which is a Dropbox, an independent Dropbox client that apparently works around the 3 device problem. But for me, if I can't access my stuff on a Dropbox stuff folder on one of my devices, it's just not useful. Right. Or rather, I should say, it's only useful as a way of sharing with other people by URL. Like, here, let me put that in Dropbox and give you the URL. And I do that because it's slightly cleaner than doing it with Google Drive. About the same, really, but it's slightly cleaner. And iCloud Drive hasn't done that until recently, so I'm just not even in the mode of thinking of using iCloud Drive for that. I still have a public folder in Dropbox because I'm back to when that used to be a public folder where everything you just put in there was automatically made public. It's now just called public, and it's just a normal folder. But that was the approach long ago.
So have you, other than the use that you just described, have you dropped Dropbox completely?
I won't say dropped it. It's just that I don't use it. So like it, I'm struggling here because the fact is that what happens is you come up with a way of dealing with a certain kind of file. So I have certain files that live in Dropbox. And I continue working with those in Dropbox. And that's because they don't run into this 3-device limit in some important way. And they're there already. Maybe it's a shared folder with someone else, that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to take them out of Dropbox. I'm not going to stop using it. I just don't use it for new stuff or different kinds of activities. And so it's sort of the same. I mean, it's sort of the same thing I was saying before, is that, you figure out what your modality is for different people or different activities, and you pick the cloud storage service that matches best with that set. And so for me, like Google Drive is what I more share with this one group of people that I use. iCloud Drive is what I more use to share files between my laptop and my M1 MacBook Air and my 2020 iMac. And Dropbox is what I would use to share a file with a random person who I need to send them something that's too large. So, like there's, 3 completely different use cases, which could be like built in, shoehorned into one if I had to, but I don't quite want to. Like I'm too used to the other ones to say, oh, I'm gonna get rid of everything but Google Drive. I could theoretically do everything with Google Drive.
You could theoretically do everything with iCloud and Google Drive. I mean, iCloud, because we're Apple users, I think iCloud is a bit of a special case.
Yes and right. You almost can't get away from using iCloud at all. You're right. I mean, like I don't actually use iCloud. When I'm talking about iCloud, I'm talking about iCloud Drive, and I'm talking about arbitrary files. I'm not really talking about. I'm not talking about like built-in file store for apps. So if an app has got iCloud Drive hard coded as how it syncs between your devices, then you're kind of stuck with it, as you say. And there is some of that happens to me, but I'm really not thinking about it in that way. I'm thinking about it as I go into the iCloud Drive thing in my Finder. I like to say thing because who knows what it actually is these days. It's an item in the sidebar. And work with my files there. That's like when I'm doing certain kinds of writing, and I need to like collect screenshots, and I'm available on all my Macs. That's where I'll put
them. And I've come to, for a while, it annoyed me because I used to like to organize things the way I wanted to organize them, as you said, in the Finder. Now, though, I'm finding more and more if I use Pages, if I use Keynote, that it's really simple to open those applications, and all the files are right there, and accessible from within that application. And by the way, they're also accessible on that Mac over there, and my iPad, and my iPhone, and seamlessly. I didn't have to set it up. All I had to do is just accept the fact that they're going to be in iCloud. They're still local, but I'm just not the one organizing them anymore.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely the case. And I mean, this goes back to the very underpinnings of Mac OS 10 when that first came out, and people are like, what's this home folder thing? And I have, documents and desktop and movies and pictures, and what are these folders? I don't like them. And, this is just the new version of that, where we have to be able to say, Apple's chosen this particular way of organizing files, and we can like it or not, but you can't avoid it. It is simply what it is. I don't run into that much because I actually don't use any of Apple's Keynote pages, those kinds of things, significantly enough for it to matter. So I simply don't notice. Certainly when I open my iCloud Drive folder, there's 20 or 30 apps that have their folders in there, and I ignore all those and go to the ones that I created. Because that's where like my screenshots live that I'm trying to move back and forth between my computers.
Right. And I mean, now, like you said, Apple has finally made it usable so that you can do that. You're not kind of locked out of
most of the time. I mean, that was kind of what I was saying in the article is that I will say it's less reliable than Dropbox or Google Drive, frankly. And it just sometimes it stops working either entirely or for a particular file, and you're like, why? Nothing's changed. Why is this not working? And the only solution I found is to log out of iCloud Drive entirely on the computer, delete all the files, which is scary as all get out, but you really do want to do that. And actually, it won't even, I mean, you can do it. It will often force you to save them because, of course, it's stuck, so it can't finish uploading. And so it says, well, you must have this iCloud Drive archive left on your computer when you're done. And so, yeah, so you try to delete all the files, you get this iCloud Drive archive, and then you turn it back on again, everything comes in again. So it's an easy troubleshooting and fixing step, but it's annoying that it has to happen. And I have had to do it way too many times that to be happy about that fact.
But just to be fair, so that everybody's on the same level playing field, I've had the same issues with Dropbox. I've had the same issues with Microsoft Teams. I've had the same issues with OneDrive. The things. And we've talked about this before, Adam. Syncing is hard. It really is. It seems like it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but it really is. Yeah. No, it's absolutely the case, and it is true that I have seen that with other services in the past, but less frequently, and that's and often with better feedback. Or like I don't know, if Dropbox isn't updating and you mouse over the menu, the icon in the menu bar, and you get the spinning pizza of death. Well, that's a hint. You should restart.
Yeah.
That's the app is frozen. It's not going to sync. You should you need to fix that. And an easy way to do it is to restart. And there's no shame in some of that stuff. It's just more that I do expect a little better from Apple, in part because it's built in. So here's the thing. As I said, I have this M1 MacBook Air. I have this 2020 iMac. Their SSDs are the same size. So I could do this. I finally have thought maybe I'll turn on desktop and document syncing, because that would be handy at times, right? I mean, it's not a terrible idea, and I really do want to have the same things available on the, particularly the desktop, actually less so the documents folder. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, is this going to cause me more trouble if I'm relying on it even more heavily with desktop and documents folder syncing, because now they're out of sync again, and I have to have the scary part of deleting all those folders along with everything else. And yes, I have backups, and I backed up 6 ways from Sunday, so I'm not really worried about losing things. But it can happen, particularly when you're working quickly and you've just done something, and then if it's on one machine but it's not on the other, you switch machines. You're like, oh, now I have to go back. And part of this is you can't tell this, but I'm upstairs in my house, and my laptop generally lives downstairs, and so it's like, I gotta walk downstairs just to get a file, and then and it's like if you don't actually bring the computer up, you just move it or something and do something on the computer down there, and then you walk back upstairs. It invariably doesn't work for whatever reason, and then you have to go do it again. You just feel stupid walking up and down the stairs to move files around. I mean, there's sneakernet, and we've grown beyond that.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Sometimes. And the world's always like that. Just I have to restart something. AirDrop isn't working between my iPhone and my iMac, in the last day or two. Normally it works fine. I'm sure I just have to restart something, but until then, I do the AirDrop thing, and I'm like, not working. not working. Okay, let me try another way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you do feel like you're back to like floppy disk days.
Yeah. You're right. We've kind of been airing some dirty laundry here, I think, about clouds. And for the most part, though, I wouldn't want to go back to just the way it was, because
No
this is
question.
much better than that. So, just it's the price of, I guess, things not being perfect and of having all these competing services.
I mean, as I said before this, we were talking FTP servers. You want to talk about kind of world and slow internet connections, because that was back way in the day. And I remember uploading a copy of one of my books that was like 170 megabytes over FTP, and like hoping beyond all hope that it would work. And I think it didn't work, and I had to try again because like it couldn't restart from the same spot in the file, and it was going to take it 6 hours and that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, the fact is this stuff actually works incredibly well overall. It's just that therefore when it doesn't work, it becomes painfully obvious.
Yeah. Well, I referenced it earlier, but that happened to me this morning, where I tried to go in and get a document that was just there yesterday, and suddenly it's not there.
Yeah.
And I restarted the application twice, and all of a sudden there it is.
Yeah.
What was that? So,
and little things like Google Drive keeps popping up an alert telling me that something has been moved to the trash, and therefore it's going to be deleted from my Mac because I've got the file syncing. And I'm never really quite sure what it's talking about. And I go and like look in the trash in Google Drive, and I don't really see anything there. Most like the files there are like clearly someone was working on a file, so it was a temp file, and then they closed it, and then the app tried to delete its temp file, and so like that's what it is. But right. It's definitely a confusing situation. And I don't know, Howard Oakley just had something he wrote about how iCloud Drive actually can create a situation where Time Machine doesn't back its contents up, which, in some sense, yeah, you've got just another copy, but it's still, if you expect your Time Machine backup to be complete, you would be potentially perturbed if it was not. And then you try to bring everything back and don't hook it up to iCloud again, and the files aren't there. Of course, if you hook it up to iCloud again, then in theory, they should all just come in again. Right. Well, there's a lot of like in theory, and the in theory works in practice most of the time. It's like people who say they don't have to back up because it's all in the cloud. Oh, yes, you do, but we understand why you say that. Yeah, you think that's true, and most of the time you'll be right, but when you're not right, you'll be really, really sorry.
Well, and especially with iCloud, they came along and said the truth is in the cloud. I said, well, wait a minute. The truth is, it's right here on my hard drive. We were so used to that. But now, just to what you're saying, if I've got to delete all these files, oh my God.
I still remember the first time my iCloud Photos library got seriously corrupted, and I had to actually blow it away and download everything from the cloud. And I'm like, okay, this is scary as all get out. And it did work, but it was, hundreds of gigabytes and tens of thousands of photos. So
yeah. As we close this out, Adam, any suggestions, comments, thoughts? What would you tell people who are struggling with this, or maybe who think they want to move more things to the cloud? Because a lot of us are doing just that, whether it's because our companies are or we personally are.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I would say is that you probably can't get away from using multiple services, but that it's probably best to think fairly carefully such that you can use the fewest number is reasonable. So for instance, I do have OneDrive through my Microsoft 365 subscription, but I don't use it. I could. There's nothing wrong inherently with it. I mean, I know they had a big fuss over whether or not files were local or remote mostly and things like that, and that's what's going on right now. But the fact is, like, I'm not doing that somewhat intentionally because I don't want to add more complexity to my already complicated situation. So I think what I would encourage people to do is to try to keep it as simple as possible. It's not likely it's not likely you'll be able to keep it to one. You'll almost certainly get caught up in needing to go to Google Drive for this, or iCloud Drive for that, or Dropbox for this other thing. But to the extent that you can, try to keep it sane and simple. After that, I do think that it's worth trying to back this information up, but it is a little hard to push too hard on that. And sometimes it can be better to keep some of this cloud stuff out of your backup sets if you are concerned about how big they go, or let's say you're sharing a big store with a bunch of people who change a lot of files. That could be filling up your local backups without it really being any benefit to you if it's not actually your files, just files that are shared with you. So sometimes there's some oddities there that you need to think about as well. But again, on the whole, as we were saying, mostly it does just work. We can complain about the specifics here and there, but for the most part, it really does just work, and that's a good thing.
Well, and that's human nature. We always look at the one time it didn't work, and it's like, yeah, that darn thing's not reliable. Well,
it's terrible. It never. Well, it usually works. It almost always works, but it didn't this one time. Right?
Yeah.
It's not nearly as good a complaint.
Yeah. Exactly.
And as I said, partly there and people do get. I don't quite know how to quantify this, but there are people who have trouble with one or the other or the third of these services. If that's you, fine, ditch it. There are sometimes you're just jinxed. Yeah, there's no explaining it. But if you just have bad luck with Dropbox, say, stop using it. It's okay. You can really get all the same functionality out of something else. Or if you're perturbed about the fact that, Google is Google, you can do that. Or, if you're mad about Apple trying to make everything into its ecosystem, you can limit your use there as much as possible. So I do think that it's interesting in some respects that it's become ecosystem plays, because it does create at least common denominators. So as soon as you know what so-and-so uses, whether it's like a Mac or they're an Android smartphone, or they're clearly Microsoft heavy, that kind of thing. Certain things about what their capabilities are. And that is sometimes useful to be able to have in hand.
Good point. And good advice at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Adam, we got to do this more often. That's all there is to it.
Well, now that we're in this pandemic thing and we can do it during the day, which we just realized, it's a whole lot easier. I'm not going to do it late at night when I'm all tired and sleepy. And even punchier. So
but punchy sometimes can be entertaining.
Yeah, well, we have user groups for that. They're so much fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, folks, you can. I'll have the link in the show notes to this article on TidBITS, and of course, that's where you can find all of Adam's rantings and ramblings and investigations, and I don't know what else, Adam. How else?
That pretty much covers it.
That covers it. Okay.
I just did a huge article about mapping, which is sort of the same kind of thing of just like, rather than attempt to do a deep dive into one thing, it's just this kind of spin over lots of related things. So yeah, we can talk about that next if you want.
Okay, that sounds good. So that means Adam will be back next time to talk about mapping.
There we go.
Adam, thanks so much. Great to see you.
Always fun, Chuck. Talk to you soon.
I'm Chuck Joyner, folks. This is MacVoices. We will be back again soon with more, and Adam will be back again sooner than he has been in the past. How's that? Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.